Alright, just to show off just a little possession of mine. And you guys should also see it kind of over my shoulder right here from the DVD. But yes, The Letter, of course, which the main thing people remember from The Letter in Seinfeld is, in fact, the Kramer. The painting made by Jerry's artistic, jealous girlfriend, Nina. Um, which, of course, was very well known, of course, and, I'm sure a lot of people portrait purchased the painting in some ways, like a poster or, maybe an actual real painting, whatnot, whatever. Of course, Michael Richards, he thought it was awful looking, but he still wanted the painting, but he never got it, apparently, according to the interviews. But The Letter, it's a good episode. I like it. I wouldn't say it's not one of my top favorites, but I like it. It's a good episode. I definitely liked it better than The Limo. The Limo, I don't know, it's just not one of my favorites. I don't know why it wasn't, but the main storyline in The Letter is Jerry and his artistic girlfriend, Nina, who, of course, again, is painting Kramer at the beginning of this episode. She, though, I feel like is maybe the only, if not one of the very few, that was jealous of Jerry's friendship with Elaine. It just really bothered her. She had to feel more important in her, but she just felt intimidated by Elaine. Of course, Jerry had told George this, that he really likes Nina, but she's very jealous of the people he's surrounded by and such. George, of course, goes with Jerry to meet Nina while Kramer's getting painted, but George was worried that he would feel obligated to buy something. He's not really into art, but he didn't want to buy something because art's expensive and it's just not his thing. Of course, Kramer says something to George about it, and then George picks out this simple painting that he thinks that like a kid could do. And Nina said, I'll have it framed and ready for you later. But of course, no word of how much it cost. While they're there, also, Nina gave Jerry 4 tickets to the Yankee game for the coming up weekend. Jerry, though, says he can't go because he's going out of town for a tour. So Nina's like, I don't want to go if you're not going to go anyway. So she gave them to George and Kramer. Of course, there was 4 tickets, but they only used 3. Since Jerry couldn't go and Nina didn't want to go without him. So George, Kramer, and Elaine went to the game. And towards the beginning of the game, which first off, George was disappointed, though, because they were in the second row from the dugout, in the owner's box, not the very first row. They got these tickets, which actually there's a backstory as to how that story came about. They got these tickets because Nina's father, Lenny, is the Yankees' accountant. So he gets free tickets here and there. He gives them to his daughter or friends and whatnot. Which of course would play a factor towards the end of the episode. But they go, and Lenny came down to say hello. Before he walks away and says enjoy the game, he tells Elaine, because Elaine was wearing an Orioles hat, because she's from some town near Baltimore. Which Elaine thought he was kidding around. He goes, no, I'm serious. He goes, you're in the owner's box. I don't think the owner would like it if you wore, like a visiting team's hat instead of a Yankees hat or something like that. And it starts up an argument between her and Lenny, and then she basically, since she refused to take the hat off, she had her ejected from the game, which the security guard came down and put his hand on Elaine, and Elaine's like, get off of me! And keep in mind also, even though Elaine was very feisty and whatnot, she was very pregnant by this point. She got pregnant around the time of the Subway episode. So obviously she's, much more there, as she would go on maternity leave the first 2 episodes of season 4. But definitely, with her, obviously, obviously a little bit heavier. Well, Julie Louis-Dreyfus was a little bit heavier and whatnot from her being pregnant. Obviously, though, it was impressive to see how, rough housing and stuff she still was. So I'm saying a good character. Well, also a noteworthy point of this scene, though, George, Elaine got upset at George for not, because George told her to take the hat off so they didn't get kicked out. Well, Elaine got kicked out. George and Kramer could have stayed, but they chose to go with her. But Elaine got mad at George and threw his hat. So Kramer went over to the dugout to try to get George's hat back. At the same time, a foul ball was hit, and then Kramer got plunked in the back of the head with the ball. Back at Jerry's, Elaine was telling him the story, and which Jerry agreed with Elaine. It was ridiculous. They threw her out because she was wearing an Orioles hat. Now, the backstory about that actually came from a real life experience with Larry David. Howard West was friends with Gene Autry's accountant, who Gene Autry was the owner of the Angels, and he tried to get a ticket to an Angels-Yankees game in Anaheim. So through his accountant, they got Larry tickets, and Larry took a friend of his, and his friend was wearing a Yankees hat, and the same thing. One of the security guards came down and said that Autry wouldn't like, like a Yankees hat being worn, or like any type of visitor's hat being worn in the owner's box, and he thought it was ridiculous as well. But that's where that backstory came from. But then she told what happened to Kramer, and then Kramer came in. First, he called Elaine Carol, which that supposedly came from writer Carol Leifer, because that's how we refer to her as Carol. He would later call George Mike after Mike Costanza, a friend of Jerry's in real life, who they took his last name and put it with George's name. But he came in and said, "Hey, look, we made the paper." Elaine freaked out, though, because she was invited to go to her boss, Mr. Lippman's son's bris. But she didn't want to go, so obviously but to avoid, saying she was going to a baseball game, because Lippman couldn't take no for an answer, she said that she was going back home to see her father, who's in the hospital. So obviously, she knows that Lippman likes to read the Sunday sports page. He'll see the photo, and he'll know that Elaine told a white lie, which is her dumb luck. So she went to go see Lippman, who had his sports page on his desk, but he was saying how he was getting ready to go down to Houston for a publishers conference. And of course, he didn't say anything then, but she was worried probably to see something on the plane when he went down to Houston. So, meanwhile, though, back at Nina's studio, her and Jerry were arguing about Elaine not taking the hat off. And then at the same time, there was this older couple there who was admiring the Kramer portrait. And then, Jerry says that we should break up. And Nina was like, "Oh, you want to break up, but you still want to be friends. You always have to be friends with all your ex-girlfriends." And Jerry goes, "I'm only friends with the ones who I was friends with." And then she throws him out, as again the older couple was admiring the Kramer painting, called him like an orphan, a parasite, but just like the husband seemed like he was so some negative feel toward it. The wife was like throw a positive feel toward it, but yet they were both intrigued by this portrait. Later, though, also though, as Jerry was leaving, Nina takes the framed photo that she thought George was going to get and shoves it and says, "Tell George he owes me $500 for this," which George flips out. He wasn't going to pay $500 for that. Only though if they were still together, he said he would have done it. But as they broke up, that's not the case. Kramer came in, though, and he gave Jerry an envelope that was right in front of his door. And it was a letter from Nina. It was a very heartfelt letter that, Jerry was like, "I can't believe this. I've never read something like this in his life." And basically, Kramer was like, "Pick up the phone. Call her now. Fight for her, Jerry. Fight for her." So Jerry's like, "Maybe I was wrong about her all this time." So they get back together. Of course, Elaine does a pop-in right when she's getting ready to leave from a date. And she kind of gave Elaine a glare. And, of course, George trying to also get back to painting, which didn't work. Then Elaine goes back to work when Lippman had came back from the conference in Houston, and he was on the phone with someone talking about a woman at a game wearing an Orioles hat in the owner's box, and he agreed with who he was talking to, saying that that's ridiculous of this woman to wear that. Turns out that Mr. Lippman was good friends with Lenny, who, his father, is also Mr. Lippman's accountant. So he tells Elaine the story of what Lenny just told her. He then says that Lenny gave him 4 tickets to the game, an upcoming game, and he's taking his friends Frank and Marcia, and he wants Elaine to go with him. Elaine, of course, obviously does not want to go because, one, she knows she had out with this guy last time, and two, so she tells him she had plans. Lippman goes, "We'll break them off. You missed the bris. I want you to be at the game." So where I go, why are you so obsessed with your employee, Lippman? Like, why do you want Elaine there so bad? Like, I know you put the moves on her in the episode where his son, in the episode with his son's bar mitzvah and everything, but my gosh, like, if I had a boss who was like, you gotta give up everything for me outside of work, I wouldn't want to work with them. I wouldn't. There's some people who's like, there's only so far in life you want them to be included in. And, like, I kind of agree with Elaine on this one. It's like, Lippman, back off. Like, why does it have to be a big deal? But then, also, I kind of skipped ahead, but this wasn't it yet. Before this, though, after Nina left, though, when she gave Elaine that nasty glare, Jerry, Elaine, and George were watching TV, and they're arguing over, how fast they click through the channels. Well, then Jerry happens to tell them to stop clicking. Neil Simon's Chapter 2 was on. And he realized, and he read off the letter at the same time as the movie, he realized that Nina plagiarized the letter from the movie. So Jeremy thinks she's a phony. So the next time he sees Nina, while she's doing a painting, he kind of like eased into the conversation to talk about Neil Simon's Chapter 2. And basically he busts her and, they split up. But in the midst of all of that, that couple who was mesmerized over the Kramer portrait comes back and says they want to buy it. $5,000! $5,000 is how much they want it. In a deleted scene, besides Jerry, basically breaking up with Nina and saying, like, you don't need me or whatnot, this and that, the couple there says that they want to be able to meet the Kramer. And they did. He had dinner with them and everything. Before that ending scene with Kramer eating dinner with the couple and just like telling these weird stories, George and Jerry were back at the apartment talking about watching the Yankee game. Of course, George still has that painting on Jerry's table, which I don't know if George ever paid the money for or not, but George said he was going to sell it to Jerry for $10. He's like, no thanks. But then on the TV, they were saying something about how we're going to show what's going on, but there was a feisty woman in an Orioles cap right behind the owner's box, and I don't know if Jerry and George knew that Elaine was going to the game, but they looked at each other like, is that who I think it is? But, Elaine put up the dukes, despite being pregnant. But, yeah, that's the letter. Interesting episode. I liked it. Like I said, I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites, but I liked it. I definitely like it better than, like, the limo and, a couple of little odds and ends. I was just like, it's whatever, basically, but the letter was good. Next up is the parking space. That's a good one. Speaking of phony, we hear about someone thinking Jerry's a phony. And of course, we'll have the argument. Should you back in or should you go straight in? We'll talk about that in the next episode. The parking spot, whichever one it is. I'll see you guys then. Actually, also, before we go off the air, the only other fun fact I really have about this episode, well, two really. One was on the sports page on Lipton's desk. Apparently, on the front page, it was showing the final score of the National League Championship Series game between the Pirates and Braves, and also apparently Heidi Swedenborg, who would go on to eventually play Susan, the former fiance of George. She actually auditioned for the role of Nina in this episode. Very interesting. But that's all I got to say about the letter. Again, good episode. What are your thoughts on the letter? What are your thoughts on the Kramer portrait as well? Does any of you guys also have like a replica of some sorts of the Kramer portrait like I do? Make sure to leave your thoughts down in the comments section below. And be sure as always to slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content to my channel. Follow me on Twitter at TheBanditAir93. Until then, guys, I'm checking out. I'll see you guys at the parking spot. Peace out, everybody.